Hi guys, this is Vidas.
And Ausra.
Let's start episode 103 of Ask Vidas and Osha podcast. Today's question was sent by Victoria, and she wants to know if fingering is important in improvisation. That's a question that she sent me after hearing my live streaming on Facebook when I improvised for two parts. I think note against note, some of the Genevan psalms settings, like a counterpoint exercise. Uh, that was sometimes the tune was in the soprano and sometimes was in the bass. So she probably thought she might try it at home, this kind of approach. But first, of course, she wanted to figure it out if she has to choose the fingering wisely. What would you say, Osha?
Well, yes, you always have to choose your fingering wisely, but it's sort of not as easy when you are improvising things. But you could write a fingering for an original psalm.
For
What do
for
you
the
think?
for the chant,
Yes,
for
yes,
the
for the
tune.
chant, yes, for
Hmm.
the psalm too.
Exactly. When you have it, it's like a theme, right? The theme is given to you. You can notate the fingering ahead of time and add one additional voice or two, three, four voices uh, in addition to the chant for yourself at the time you're playing in improvisation spontaneously. Uh, and as Osha says, it's difficult to do this with perfect fingering if you don't have experience.
That's true.
But in my case, for example, it wasn't difficult because I used some basic principles, right? What I avoided using thumbs on the sharp keys. I avoided finger substitution, finger glissandos, and that's about it. I think those three principles led me to create even a nice articulated legato, because the style, of course, was early style.
Did you have to think about fingering while improvising these psalms or not?
That's a great question because I had to think about other things. If you have to think about fingering when you improvise, of course, you are doing something wrong. Because in improvisation, fingering has to come naturally. It's a byproduct, right? You play your music and you figure out your how the music will go, the flow of the music ahead of time or when you're playing. But your fingering principles should be set in basically in your mind well ahead of time with your practice. So Victoria is of course um, a long way to go in this, and she needs to work on many pieces of organ repertoire first to get familiar with this foundation of fingering and even pedaling too, if she wants to play with pedals.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. You build up your technique while you are learning organ repertoire. And then later on you can apply the same things, the same rules to your improvisations.
Some people also like exercises like scales and arpeggios with hands and feet uh, and chords. That's also part of any musical composition, and they basically isolate specific technical ideas into one exercise. And some people like to practice that too, and it gives good results. Some people don't because they are bored with mechanical stuff, so they jump into music right away. But there is a danger to strain your hands because your hands will be cold at first. You have to warm up. So what I like to do is to warm up with improvisation, slowly at first and gently, maybe for a few minutes, maybe for 10 15 minutes, whatever I like to do, and then I continue practicing repertoire with, of course, correct fingering.
Yes, so correct fingering is definitely important, but don't try to learn the correct fingering while improvising. You have to do it with your repertoire.
Maybe just keep the basic principles in mind, right?
Yes.
If you know the style that you will be improvising in, let's say Baroque style, right? You know the basic principles which help you to achieve the desired articulate legato. And the three principles we adhere here to is simply avoid the thumb on the sharp keys, avoid using finger substitution, and avoid using finger glissandos, because that leads to what? To legato articulation. If you are improvising in romantic style or modern style, what kind of fingering could you use, Osha?
Then, of course, you have to do all that things that you would be avoiding in a Baroque music. Glissandos, finger substitutions, play as much legato as possible, especially if it's romantic style.
So, first of all, you're free to use the thumb on the
Yes,
sharp keys.
definitely.
But it's not that convenient. It's not that comfortable to
But you
do
cannot avoid that.
if your key or the mode has many sharps or flats. You are stuck with sort of modern fingering. Um, can you avoid finger substitutions and glissandos in modern music too? Sometimes.
Well, very rarely. Usually you have to substitute.
Oh, because why? Because of course the texture is thicker.
Yes,
Mhm.
yes.
But if you are improvising in two parts, I'm not sure if there are a lot of romantic pieces for two parts. That's a little bit different
Yes.
style, right?
Usually you have thicker texture, more chords.
At least three parts,
Yes,
and
that you have to play legato.
so whenever one hand plays two voices or even more voices, you have to almost always use finger substitutions
That's
and
right.
glissandos. But in three-part texture, if your right hand, let's say, plays just one solo line, you can get away without finger substitutions and glissandos, right? Basically, don't use finger substitutions and glissandos as a crutch instead of a right fingering, because sometimes people don't even bother to think about the fingering, and they use all kinds of basically incorrect versions, accidental fingerings, right? This is not healthy, don't you think?
Yes, that's right.
Why?
Well, I think I mentioned this thing before, that if you are playing with accidental fingering, it means that you are playing the same thing over and over again with a different fingering, so you will never get comfortable with that piece, or your process of learning will be very slow.
True. So figure out the fingering ahead of time. Write it down,
Yes.
especially the difficult spots. And that's why we also like to help you practice with correct fingering by providing you our choices, fingered and pedaled scores. That's why they are so helpful for people. And so basically, uh, in modern music, you can get away with without finger substitutions and glissandos only when the texture is rather thin. So in two-part texture in modern music, there are some biciniums, right? You can do well with simple fingering, right? But then if you have chords and progressions when two voices are playing with one hand, it's another story. You have to do all kinds of things, but uh, prepared in advance things, right, Ocean?
Yes, that's right.
So for example, next time we will be playing recital only of the Baroque music, right?
Yes.
So we will not use any of the finger substitutions and glissandos in November recital. Or are you
Well,
using in?
I'm playing Mendelssohn,
Oh,
so
you're playing Mendelssohn. Are you using finger substitutions there?
all the time.
Right. It's too thick.
Yes.
It's different story. So yes, we are also applying our own tips in our practice, you see, guys. And whenever we play Baroque music, which of course we do this regularly, we avoid uh, finger substitutions and glissandos. And when improvising, also keep the same principles in mind too.
Yes.
Thanks, guys. Please send us more of your questions. We love helping you grow. This was Vidas.
And Tosha,
And remember, when you practice,
miracles happen.